Good evening, everybody. My name is Lynette Owens. I'm the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program, and I'd like to welcome you all to a Family Tech Talk night. We have been doing this program together with our partner PTO Today for the last 11 years. It is something that we've done as a philanthropic effort, not just across the United States, but in 20 countries around the world. I am dialing in from Boston. I have two kids, 18 and 15 years old. And over the last 14 years, 13, 14 years of doing this program, I've definitely experienced a lot of things that you may all be experiencing now, or may have experienced, or will experience down in the future. So a few things before we get started. If you want to listen in Spanish again, pick the globe icon and select the Spanish channel to hear our translator, Gigi. Sign in the attendance sheet. The link for that actually was put in the chat, and my colleagues will put it in there again if you haven't seen the sign-in form. Use the Q&A feature if you have questions. I'll encourage you to use the chat throughout tonight. But if you actually have questions, we will more easily be able to see your questions in the Q&A option. And when you leave tonight's Zoom session, you should see a web page pop up for you, and that's just to a very, very short survey. We'd love your feedback at the end. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So welcome to all of you who are dialing in from multiple places. And thank you for saying where you're from in the chat. And I just want you to know, as parents on this line, that you're here together with other parents across the country who might actually have the same questions and same concerns as you. And it's our honor and pleasure to be able to provide this forum for us to have important conversations about raising our children in a time when screen time is higher than ever. So I want to get to know you all a little bit better. And I'd like you to use the polling option that's going to come up on your screen and let us know, how old is your oldest child? Are they A, 5 years old or younger? B, 6 to 10 years old? C, 11 to 14, or D, 15 or older? How old is your oldest child? Is it A, B, C, or D? Please use the polling function so we can capture it all in the poll. All right, great. I'm just going to give it another 10 seconds and then stop the poll. All right, it looks like a majority of your oldest children are B, between 6 to 10 years old, followed by 11 to 14, and then another big group of you are in my category, which is 15 or older, and then a few of you with 5 years old or younger. So it's really great for us to know that. I think you are all in facing some interesting times, regardless how old your oldest child is, because none of them, including you, have experienced what we just did over the last 18 months. But thank you for letting me know, so I'm aware of who you all are and where you might be in your phase of parenting right now. The second question I'm going to ask you is, what are you most interested in hearing about tonight? And again, I will launch the poll here for you to let us know. Oh, I apologize. The polling is not working here. So if you want to just put in the chat what are you most interested in hearing about tonight? Managing screen time. B, helping my kids stick to age-appropriate content. C, dealing with online bullying. D, ideas for positive uses of the internet. And E, I'm not sure, just here to learn something new. So is it A, B, C, D, or E? I'm seeing a lot of B's. Not surprising, given the ages of your children. I'm glad to see some D's out there and E's. Few A's. I'm not surprised at that as well. So, okay, fantastic. Thank you for letting us know. We're going to actually cover all of these things, but some of them we're going to spend a little bit more time on, given the numbers of you that have answered B and A in particular. But again, anytime there are questions, please let us know in the Q&A. It's the best way to make sure that we're able to capture and answer your questions. And finally, if you're just joining us, I see a few people have just joined. There is a sign-in link. If you could just click the link that you see there for my colleague, Michael. There is a form. Just give us your name and the school that you're coming in from so we can track that. Thank you very much. Okay. So as I keep referring to, a lot has changed over the last 18 months. And there's also a lot of things that haven't. I do want to ask this question, and you don't need to comment on this now, but think about the rules you had to change over the last 18 months. Maybe you allowed a little more screen time. Maybe you said yes to TikTok finally. Maybe you allowed a video game that you would not have otherwise. And then think about, as things started to change back to normal, quote unquote, how did you handle the transition? Was there a struggle with resetting screen time rules? Did you wish you didn't say yes to an app that you did say yes to a year ago? I think it's important for us to reflect on what just happened to us and to our families, because it was a collective traumatic event. It has been a collective traumatic event. And as part of the process of going through that and onto the other side, spend some time maybe over the Thanksgiving holiday thinking about this question. What did you change that you don't want to go back to? You know, what had to change that you don't want to go back to? And the other question is, what did you change with your screen time use and your screen time rules that actually you don't mind keeping? You don't mind keeping forever. In my family, we began actually making time to sit for meals together. We were always so busy, and finding a show that we all really love. And it now brings us, we look forward to, it's been a long time for us because I have teenagers. We really look forward to sitting down to those meals, and then after the meal, having time to watch this show together. But think about those moments that you didn't mind changing. That you didn't mind changing and want to keep. Regardless of all that change, there's a lot of things that didn't change. And one is that our children still need guidance. You know that. That's why you're here tonight. And we will talk about some ways that you can provide that. The risks are definitely still there. And I would say in some cases, some of the risks have gone up. On the flip side, we probably realized benefits, as did our children, benefits of technology that we may never have noticed or had the opportunity to experience had it not been for the last 18 months. So that is why we're strong believers that teaching children about how to be good digital citizens is not just important, it is more paramount than ever. And when we talk about digital citizenship here in our program, we include 4 things. We definitely want to talk about risks and how to help children avoid those. We will talk about safety and security. But we also have to remember that even if you know what is safe and what is not, you still have to learn how to use the tools properly. For example, if your child finally is very aware that privacy is an important thing to protect, do they know actually how to do it on an app? Do they know where to find the privacy settings, how to turn them on, how to block somebody or report something they see that's disturbing? It includes conversations about how we behave, how we treat others, and also how we conduct ourselves within different online communities. Do we know the rules? And finally, It includes a conversation about mastery. Very often when we talk to kids about technology use, it's really hard not to stay away from making it a long list of what not to do. But we have to remember that helping our children be great digital citizens has to include a conversation and guidance and setting examples about the things they should be doing online, ways that are positive, ways that are productive, ways that can be good for themselves now and in the future, for others, and even for the world around them. So we like to organize all of this into 4 buckets. First, we want to talk about being online, and you as parents, it is your role to make sure that you set them up for success while they're online. And that means setting up the right environment, setting the rules, and setting a good example. Once they are there, we need to make sure that they're safe. So this is a conversation about how to protect privacy, personal information, and even your physical self. How do I behave towards others? How can we make sure that our children are being kind? And in terms of kindness, we don't just talk about how you treat others. It's also about how you direct some of that kindness towards oneself. We'll explain a little bit more about what we mean later on. And finally, how to be savvy. How do we encourage children to practice good habits and encourage them to use the internet in positive, productive ways? So let's start with setting up the environment. I'm not going to belabor this part too much, but I will share with you that in recent research from the Digital Wellness Lab, which comes from the Children's Hospital in Boston, one of the best pediatric hospitals in the world. In their most recent survey among a nationally represented sample of parents across the US, there's some great findings, but one of the things that pediatricians are starting to see more of that they had not seen prior to the pandemic are some of the physical symptoms of increased screen time. Eye strain is a big one. So if you're not familiar with them, there are many parents already who told me over the past year they've invested in blue light blocking glasses. And these are not prescription. You can get them on Amazon. But if their eyes are on those screens for homework and then they're on it for fun, make sure that you're encouraging a protection of the eyes, because like I said, the pediatricians are reporting increased number of kids coming in and complaining about the eye strain. We also recommend the 30-30-30 rule, which is every 30 minutes, look away from the screen for 30 seconds and focus on something that it's at least 30 feet away, maybe out the window, just rest the eyes. I mean, even better, just get up and walk around. So make sure you're encouraging your kids for these habits at young ages, and you probably should be doing them too. I could be better about it. Making sure that when they are using screens that their postures are not in strange positions. Again, the neck strain, the headaches are new. This is something that's been on the rise, and just getting up and moving. Setting up the environment also includes a conversation about technology. And so again, I won't spend too much time on this, but your job in setting up the environment is to make sure they're going to be safe. And sometimes with the younger ones, if they're using that iPad and they accidentally tap on something they didn't mean to, that could be trouble for you because you're on the same network potentially for work. So, first step is the password that came with your router. If you have not changed that since you bought it, you probably should do that, and make sure you do that on some regular basis as well. The second is that every network, home network, if you have a router, you can actually set up a guest network, a second part of it. And we recommend that if you're working from home, or even your own desktop or laptop that has sensitive material like photos you don't want to lose, or tax filing information, or you do your banking on it, for example. Use the main part of the router, or part of your Wi-Fi network for that. Put everything else on the guest network. Put everything else on the guest network. So that, like your kids' Kindles, Xboxes, if you have smart devices in the home, like a Ring doorbell or whatever, or a smart TV, consider putting that on the guest network. That way you will protect your devices that have sensitive material. Using a Wi-Fi extender, as well as having conversations with your family about who needs to be online and when. These are two ways to make sure that when they're online for school or homework, or you're online because you need to be at a meeting like this one right now, and you don't want your connectivity to be bad, using a Wi-Fi extender that helps people at any other parts of the house have a better connection, and alternating when people are online is a good way to make sure that the network keeps going. On security, again, I won't belabor this because I know that many of you said you're really interested in talking about things like making sure my kids don't look at content that's not appropriate. I will just say that making sure right now more than ever you are practicing good security hygiene, good security habits. For example, making sure that every device that connects to the internet has security software on it. And within that security software, turning on the firewall, which basically is just watching traffic that's coming in and out and telling you that one's okay to come in, that one's not, right? So make sure you probably already have some of it on your computer, but if you haven't paid for it or updated it in a while, please do that, because your children, again, are connecting as well as you. And they might be downloading things or clicking on things that could wreak havoc in your home. We also know that during the pandemic, internet use just went through the roof. There's now 5.1 billion internet users in the world, which is really phenomenal. And cyber criminals know that. So they've been up to their tricks, and they might not be trying to fool your kid, but just because they're in the internet, that could happen. So make sure you are using security software and turning on that firewall everywhere you are. Using strong passwords, I'll show you an exercise you can do with your kids on how to practice good password skills in a minute. Turning multi-factor authentication on. Okay, so in the chat, who uses Facebook, and do you have multi-factor authentication turned on your Facebook account? It might be called, I can't remember now if they call it two-step verification or two-factor authentication. I'm not going to make you feel guilty if you say no. Don't feel bad about that. Do you have it on your children's Instagram, Snapchat, Roblox, TikTok accounts? If you don't have it on for your children's apps too, please promise me that after tonight you go in and do that. Again, it's important, because if anyone ever found out the password to those accounts, then they'd be able to get right into the account and pretend they're you. But if you have multi-factor authentication on, or two-step verification on, this is another way to add another lock on top of the password. It means that when you turn it on, after you enter the password, you turn on the setting, you'll probably have to enter a phone number or an email address. And every time you log in, it's going to email you a code or text you a code. That code will be different every time you log in. That is your second password, okay? So having both a password and multi-factor or two-step verification on makes sure you're more secure. Great. And I see the chat. I'd love to bring this talk to the school. We'd love to go, by the way. We have not been able to go into schools in a long time, and we miss the kids, but so we'd love to do it. We have a great version of this for younger people. Finally, using a virtual private network that makes sure that any information you're sending out there on the internet, let's say you're shopping on Amazon. Have you heard of it, Amazon? And you put in the credit card information that as the traffic is moving between you and Amazon, it's protected. Okay, especially if you're outside of your home. Never use free Wi-Fi without a VPN, please. Teach your kids to do that. Now, where are you going to find good security software? Where are you going to find a good virtual private network? I'll do a tiny little plug here. Trend Micro has these options for you, but if you did a search online, I like there's a few great tech sites you can search on. CNET is one, cnet.com. Just look up the top 10 best. Look up the top 10 best, and you'll have some great options there. Just a few habits when it comes to technology. Update everything, okay? Even on your kids' iPhones and iPads, make sure those things are getting updated. All the apps that need updates are happening. I'm not a big fan of doing it real time because that can drain your battery on a mobile device. Plug it in at night and do the updates then so that you don't have to worry about running out battery. But those updates are very important, especially these days, because they are plugging security holes many times. So make sure they're always updating. And an exercise you can use with your kids in terms of making strong passwords is think of a sentence. They can make up a really funny sentence if they want, and use the first letter of each word in the sentence as your password. Throw in a number, a special character, even a space bar. The longer it is, the stronger it is. And it's easier to remember than a random string of letters and numbers. Just think about the sentence. And have them do this every time they download a new app or get a new device. Teach them this so they keep doing it later on in life. Finally, just back everything up. If you're using iCloud, if you're using Google Cloud, if you're using some other online service, that's great. If you can swing it though, I highly recommend getting a secondary backup, the hard, the drives that you can get, USB drives you can get. They're becoming less expensive over time. That way, if something happens to the stuff in the cloud, you have the physical backup, or if something happens to the physical drive, you have everything in the cloud, okay? If you're just joining us, please, I think you've seen the link in the chat to just chime in, but here we go. Now, let's get into the good stuff, because many of you asked about how do I make sure my kids only look at stuff that's age appropriate? And so let's talk about these tech tools that can help you do that. They don't just help you limit age appropriate content, but also limit, in-app purchasing, or even the amount of time they're spending on a particular app. And some of them even let you monitor what they're doing. So I think probably many of you, let us know in the chat, how many of your kids are using Apple devices? Apple devices, iPads, iPhones. You got lots of Apple families there. I do have something for the Android families too. But anybody using screen time? Are you familiar with iOS screen time, Apple screen time? All right. So Apple screen time, for iOS screen time, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, you can set it up. It's a setting called screen time, but it actually does more than just screen time management. It's the same thing, by the way, that tells you on Sunday mornings that you've been using your phone 16% more than you did last week. And you feel guilty for like 5 minutes, and then you don't change your behavior, like me. And anyway, with screen time, you can set up your kids with an Apple account under yours. And once you do that, you can see here, this is my phone screen and my kids there. Once you select a child, you can actually see not only how they've been using their device, you could see which apps they were using, how long they were using each. You can see how many times they picked up the phone. It's an amazing amount of data that Apple is collecting on us, by the way. Same with Google and Facebook, and frankly, all of them. And you can also limit the types of apps they can download. You can decide that they can only use Instagram for 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day. You can do all kinds of things with screen time. So if you're not already familiar with it, I highly recommend you become familiar with it and use it to your advantage if it's something, if it will help you limit the kinds of apps and content that your kids are seeing. For the Android families out there, we have any Android families out there? I think I saw Samsung. Yep. Pixel is Google as well. So any kids using a Pixel phone, this would apply to you. Google launched about a year and a half ago an app called Google Family Link. And basically it helps you do everything that I just described with Apple. Okay. So I highly recommend. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. Both of those things are free. So please consider downloading that so you can decide the kinds of apps your kids can download, who can contact them, how much time they're spending on it. You can even track where they're going because they're mobile, right? So any kids using YouTube? Anybody's kids using YouTube? I would be surprised if not every single person's kids are using YouTube. Right? Well, it took a little while, but earlier this year, YouTube finally launched something called a supervised account. Today, before they did that, the options were the very little kids. If those of you whose children are 5 years old or younger, you have a great option with something called YouTube for Kids. Okay, YouTube for Kids is just an app, and YouTube decided only these videos can be seen by children watching it. So that's a great option when your kids are very, very young. But at some point they outgrow that. But they're not ready for everything on YouTube yet. So what YouTube has done is created 3 settings. And it's up to you how old you think your children are and which of these settings is most appropriate for them. But they've said something like 8 to 11 will be the explore setting. That means they can see a little bit more than what is shown in YouTube for Kids. Explore more is for up to 14 years old. And most of YouTube takes you all the way up to 17 years old. It excludes adult content. Okay. So anyone can use this. You don't have to be a Google Android family. It can be any family. As long as you have a Google account, you can set up a YouTube supervised account for your kids. Okay. And then you choose which of these settings so that when you let them use YouTube, you can breathe a little more freely, that they're not going to see things that you think aren't appropriate for them. Anybody's kids using TikTok? I know I'm going to see no ways and I'm going to see yeses out there. Lots of no's, lots of yeses, no TikTok yet, right? That's fine. It is a very, very polarizing app right now. But you know what? All of the other apps were too when they first came out. So here's a great way when your child is finally old enough to use TikTok and you are comfortable with it. They announced last year at the beginning of the pandemic something called TikTok family pairing. And what that allows you to do is limit the amount of time they spend on it, the content they can see on it, and even who can message them and connect with them on it. So what you have to do is download a copy of TikTok on your phone or device and a copy on theirs, and you designate the one with your, you designate the TikTok account on your phone as parent and the other one as teen. And once you're in there, like I said, you can pretty much start to block out any stuff that's not appropriate. So I've tested this and I saw animals, very cute, some of them funny, senior citizens dancing. It's just really pretty harmless stuff. So that's a way that you can sort of ease your kids into the TikTok experience when they're under 13, first of all, or you don't think they're ready for everything that's on it. Here's another one. Anybody's kids using Roblox? Yeah, Roblox is, first of all, probably the fastest growing kids app right now out there. They went public in June of this year. They had a fantastic earnings announcement recently, right? Lots of money. It can cost a lot of money with Roblox. The currency on Roblox is Robux, is what it's called. The currency on Fortnite is V-Bucks, right? For those of you whose kids use Fortnite. So if you're not familiar, as we spoke about earlier, please make sure that you are using all the security settings available to you. So for those of you who are not as familiar with Roblox, Roblox is not a game. Roblox is a platform, okay, of games and of game developers. And what you're seeing here is just a short video of how you can turn on two-factor authentication, how you can limit who your child can actually communicate with on the app. Because even though you're just avatars on the games, there is still free form chatting going on, okay? And there have been instances also where children are thinking they're going into a normal, innocent game, but then they see someone, you know, the characters are behaving in a really inappropriate way. Or, you know, there's language on the clothing because they can customize their clothing that's really not appropriate in terms of the language that's on the t-shirts of the characters in the game. So there's a couple things you should be mindful of that. One thing you should know about the chat, that's the only thing about Roblox that really bothers me, is that there's free form chatting. But Roblox is one of the best apps out there at not allowing certain phrases and words to be posted in the chat. So if someone, some stranger they're playing against in a very innocent game says, hey, where do you live? What's your birthday? What's your phone number? It'll never get posted. Roblox has employed a lot of AI, artificial intelligence technology, to flag those kinds of words. And they have an army of human beings also monitoring this stuff, but it's not perfect. It's not perfect. So it's really important for you to use some of the tools, to use some of these settings, and to be involved in what your kids are doing on these apps. You don't need to be an expert, but just ask them about it and watch them play it once in a while so you know what's going on. Has anyone heard of Discord? Any kids asking you to use Discord? Any kids already using Discord? Okay, this one worries me more because they're not quite as sophisticated as Roblox right now. For those of you not familiar with Discord, it's basically a super chat app. You can create groups of chats called servers, right? Or you can join other public ones that where people talk about just stuff they all have in common, like I love Harry Potter or Marvel Cinematic Universe or whatever it is, right? So kind of the wild, wild west. Don't really recommend it for kids that are, you know, really young still. And I highly recommend that if you say okay to it, that you get very involved in the setup of it. Make sure you're turning on privacy settings, allowing, you know, the highest level of security. Like in here, you see here is keep me safe. So not just anyone can message me. Who is allowed to add you, or even the ability to block people or report users that are behaving badly. Please make sure that you're very involved if you do say yes to Discord. Okay, it can be used for great purposes, of course, but just be involved. They're getting better. They've hired some people that are taking a very close look at whether or not they've set it up in ways that are safe for everyone, but they're not quite at the level of Roblox right now. Okay. Any kids using Xbox? Yep. Oh, there's a question here. I asked you to put questions in the Q&A, please, so we can flag those more easily. But I see the question, is TikTok only for Androids? No, TikTok is available for Apple and Androids. Yep. Make sure you're spelling it with no space in the middle. TikTok. So back in last fall, Microsoft launched another free app called Family Settings. And this allows you to, from your phone, rather than having to go to the console, if you set it up, download the app, you can do it right from your phone. When your kid wants a few more minutes on the Xbox, you can say yes or no. They want to download a new game, yes or no. They want to connect with a new person, yes or no. So the beauty of it is you can do it all from your phone rather than having to go wherever the Xbox is. Any of these apps, anytime you're using settings, I think it's a really good idea. Take advantage of the moment that your child comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, can I please have a few more minutes on whatever it is they're doing, and have a conversation. If they really can't because you've got to get somewhere, if they've got some other responsibility, that's fine. But there might be a good reason why they might be asking for more time. And I'm a big fan of any app that encourages conversation between parent and child. Okay. Now, that's a lot of settings for just a handful of apps. Your children might be using many more apps and games than I would even ever be able to mention in one night. So what we decided to do is on our own, we are a technology company, even though this program is philanthropic at no cost to families, including this new app that we launched just a couple months ago called Trend Micro Family. And what we're trying to do is take all that we've learned in our community work and come up with a way to make it easier for you as parents. So our goal with Trend Micro Family is for you to be able to do all those settings in one place. Okay, we're still in the early stages of development. Any parents out there that want to be part of our testing process, I'd love to hear from you. We want to build this in a way that really means something and is very useful for families. It does a bunch of other things that I won't get into now, but please download it at tmfamily.care. We'd love to get your feedback and build it the way you want it. It doesn't cost anything. So that's a lot about tech stuff. Any questions? I'll get to them right now. Is there a link for the video on the Roblox settings? Yes, there is a video, a link, sorry. It's actually in the Roblox safety page, but we can actually send that out. If you signed in with your email address, we can actually email that to you later on. Another question, does PlayStation have the same capability as the Xbox? I don't believe they have. They have the ability to limit things that if it's connected to like a browser and everything, you can limit, for example, games that are age, greater than 10 plus or, not suitable based on those 8 video game age ratings. You can do that in the PlayStation. I don't believe there's a separate app. I'm not aware of one right now. And will you be able to share these slides? This session is being recorded, so we will be sending the recording link to the person at your school that organized this event for you. That person will get a copy of the link to the presentation, to the recording. Okay. So the Xbox, the Nintendo Switch. Again, I'm not aware of a similar app to the Xbox Family Settings, but I do believe that Nintendo Switch has some of those capabilities I explained with the PlayStation. They largely depend on either you can connect to the internet or not, or you can play a game based on the age rating of the game or not. Okay. The Xbox Family Settings, I think, is a lot more sophisticated. Right. And if any of you are thinking about getting an Xbox for your family this holiday season, then maybe that will weigh into. I'm not vouching for Microsoft necessarily. I'm just looking at it from a safety perspective. All right, on the rules, I'll just simply say here, I want to ask you, are there any rules that work for you? Put in the chat. Are there any rules that work really well for you? Put it in the chat. Do you have any rules for your kids that work really well? And while you're thinking of those rules that work well for you, rules for your children on their use of the technology. No YouTube. Wow, that's yeah, that's a big one. You designate time. That's great. I think these are great rules. No, yes, we're the same. No electronics at dinner. None of that. And it's really, rules are going to be very personal to you, to your children, to their level of maturity and responsibility. But we do want to just draw your attention to the fact that, rules need to be very comprehensive. Thinking about what they're allowed to use, when they're allowed to use it, how long they're allowed to use it, where. And I don't mean just where in the house. It is important to say, hey, no phones in the bedroom after a certain amount of time or certain hour. And we don't charge anything in our bedrooms. We charge them in a common area of the house, right? Where can also be when they go to a friend's house. If you have rules about no violent video games, it's really important to make sure you let the other parent know, hey, we don't allow this kind of thing in our house. So can you make sure they play something else, right? So where are they allowed to do these things is not just in your house, but what are the rules even outside the house, and with whom they are allowed to connect with. Some really good rules too, if you haven't done it before, have your children be a part of the, thinking about these rules, especially when they download a new app for the first time or get a new video game for the first time, or maybe this holiday they're going to get new devices and new video games, right? Have a conversation about what the rules are going to be around that app or that device, and have them be a part of deciding what the consequences would be if they break those rules. Okay. Now, you as parents, I have to ask you, if you're going to set rules, stick to them. Okay, stick to them. Sometimes you feel bad, or sometimes there are circumstances where you got to bend it a little bit. That's fine. But it's really important that if you're going to set those rules, stick to them. Okay. I do want to talk, there were some concerns about screen time. And it's just a thought, a way to think about screen time that you can have a conversation with your children about, but also help you feel maybe a little less guilty about, especially during this difficult period in time. And it's called the 24-hour exercise. This comes from the Digital Wellness Lab. These are a lot of pediatricians who work with children who might have problematic internet use, right? They just can't get away from it for whatever reason, having unhealthy relationships with their technology. But for most of you, that would hopefully not be the case. And the way to think about this with your children is to think about the fact there's only 24 hours in a day. So you can have them write this down, or you write it down for them and talk about it. But because there's only 24 hours in a day, we have to remember all of the things that we need to do that keep us healthy and happy. And let's think about those and how many hours those things take. So ask your child, how many hours did you do things that are good for your body, right? How long did you sleep, eat or help prepare meals, exercise or play outside, ride your bike, whatever it is? All those things are really good for you and your physical health. How much time? On top of that, how much time are you spending to support yourself as a learner? So how much time did you spend in school doing homework, practicing an instrument, or reading, or some other hobby? How much time on top of that are you spending to support the relationships that are important in your life? And by the way, some of that in the pink could be on screens. It could be FaceTime with relatives. Whatever it is it supporting the relationships that are important in their lives? So now you add everything up, okay? There's going to be some time left over, hopefully. And in that time left over, if they've done all of these things that were important for them that day, it's okay. It's okay to use screens. But if the orange box equals 6 hours or 4 hours, it does not mean that you need to use the Xbox or Instagram for that much time, right? That's where your rules and the tools that we talked about can help you make sure that this time left over is spent in a more healthy way. And in that time left over, some ideas that I've collected over the years, a good suggestion is have your children come up with other things, other activities that they could do in their free time. Write it on a little piece of paper, fold it up in a box. Some of the ideas could be screen time, some of it not, and have them pick out from the box what they're going to do with that free time. It's just a healthier way to talk to your children about screen time. The fact that there's only 24 hours in a day, and a lot of it is spent doing really important and good things for us. And if we've done all of those things, then having screen time left over is okay. Finally, what rules do you have for yourself? You have any rules for yourselves? If you're working from home, how do you separate from work to home these days? You have any rules for yourself when it comes to technology? You know, it's important for us as we think about setting rules for our kids that we are making sure we're doing as we say. If you asked your child to describe your relationship with your phone, what would they say? Your relationship with your laptop, what would they say? I had a parent tell me that her daughter drew a picture of her and it was just a rectangle with just her eyes showing, because that's all she ever saw of her mother. Her mother was always in front of her laptop. She only saw her eyes most of the day. So please remember, they're watching us and they'll do what we do, not necessarily what we say. Yeah, it's very hard to separate work. I completely hear you on that. On being safe, you know, this is really important. And I know somebody put in the chat earlier, you know, what are the things we need to watch out for? So we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about privacy, because, you know, now more than ever, everybody's online. So much information is being collected about us and our children online. And there are people who might abuse that information, whether it's strangers or cyber criminals or whomever. So, you know, very obvious step is make sure you're using privacy settings. And, you know, while I'm just showing you, this is Fortnite for any Fortnite fans out there, or are your children's Fortnite fans. By default, very often, by default, the privacy is not set on the way you want. So I recommend that, especially again, this holiday, if your children get new games or new apps, maybe they get an iTunes or Google Play gift card and they download new apps, make it a habit. See how fast they can find the privacy settings. Just make a game of it and look at it together. Have a conversation about why it's important. And, you know, if you're not comfortable with the level of privacy that app or game gives you, maybe a different app or game would be a better use of time. But here's the thing about privacy. And for those of you whose children, most of you have a little bit younger, but this is a good thing to remember, especially for you with older kids, that while privacy settings protect us from the people we don't know, they do nothing to protect our privacy from the company whose app or game we're using. Nothing. Because when you first download that or use it or turn it on, and all of that legal language comes scrolling up at you and you never read it, you go right past it, you go right to the end and hit I agree or I accept, right? In that language, it's not written in these words, but it's basically what it means. It says that you own everything you do, everything you say, everyone you're following, whatever you're doing, everything you post on this app. But we have the right to use it whenever, wherever, forever. Okay. The reason for that is advertising. You know, they'll tell you, oh, we're using this data because we want to make sure our game or our app is working really nicely for you. We want to make sure that it's giving you a great experience. Yeah, they're doing that. They're doing that. but they also have to stay in business. And you did not pay to download the app. How else are they getting paid? Through advertising. So when we tell children, just assume, hey, as soon as you're on the internet, welcome to your public life. This is what we mean, okay? We're not just trying to scare them. They literally are part of the information economy. As soon as they're on the internet, privacy goes away. And this is exactly why. Okay, it's not because we're trying to scare you. When I've delivered that message in middle schools, it actually is a great conversation. We actually trick them and ask them, is Instagram free? And it starts a conversation about what does free really mean? And no, it's not free, I guess, because I'm giving up lots of personal information. And then it leads us into a conversation about why there is truly no privacy online. So it works really well. I had a 5th grader ask me if she could sue Instagram. And I said, did you hit it, I accept? And she said, yes. And then I said, no, because you hit I accept. I did want to ask her why she was on Instagram in 5th grade, but I didn't do that. I kept that part to myself. Now, cybercrime is, as I said, on the rise because we're all online all the time. And, you know, cyber criminals aren't necessarily trying to come after your kids. However, they go wherever the people go. And if your kids use search engines, if they watch YouTube, if they download stuff, if they click on stuff, they can definitely become a victim of cyber criminals. And when they click on that thing or tap on that thing accidentally, you could actually be downloading, you know, malicious software that could be spying on you, something called a keylogger that's just sitting on your computer, waiting until you go to a banking site and you enter in a password to it, just waiting for that to happen. So that's why we said earlier, your children might accidentally, with their little fingers, click on something or download something they didn't mean to. You got to have security software to make sure that doesn't happen, especially since if you're working at home and they're using the same network, you're really putting all of you at risk, okay? Okay, next question. I'd like you to use the poll option here. Do any of your children have their own cell phone? A, yes. B, no. C, not yet, but soon. Or D, not for a few more years. Do any of your kids have their own cell phone? Yes, no, not yet, and not for a few more years. I'll just give it another second. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll here. Thank you for those who've answered. So it looks like most of you said yes, but if I add up all the no's and not yets, you probably outnumber them. Yeah, you do. Most of you are not there yet. Okay, that's fine. No matter where you are in this life cycle, at some point you're going to say yes. At some point your kids will have that cell phone. So in addition to using things like security software on the cell phone and reminding your kids to be careful what they're clicking on, and you know, we'll talk a little bit about how they're behaving towards others. I do want to talk about one thing about the phone, especially the thing they love the most about the phone, and that's the camera. Okay. Encourage your kids to have fun with it, especially as we're heading into holidays. They might be taking lots of video or, you know, pictures of the family. Love using those filters. Those filters are really fun, right? But one thing that you should be aware of, we've been tracking this together with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, with a nonprofit organization called Thorn, with an international organization called In Hope. In the last 18 months, there has been an enormous rise in self-produced images of young people in ways that they would not want the whole world to see. And I don't know all of who's out there listening, so I want to put it very delicately. They are not the kind of images you would want the whole world to see, okay? And there's the amount is enormous because we've all been online. So I want to make sure that you as parents, before you give them that first cell phone, or for those of you who have already given your child a cell phone, please have this conversation and remind them they should never, ever feel pressured to take one of those pictures. And why do I say that? Because a lot of the times they are not being pressured by a complete stranger. It's their peers. Thorne did some research across the United States, and they asked the kids, how old were you when you first were asked for a nude? 9 and 10 years old. Okay. Innocent classmate just might be asking for it. They may think that's just, hey, I just trying to show you that I like you, or why don't you show me if you like me? So here's the problem with that. A, you would not want that to get out everywhere. And B, it's technically a felony to create, produce, or distribute images like that of younger underage people. Now, are the police going to prosecute 2 13-year-olds for doing that? No, they're not going to do that. But I want to share a question that was asked of me by a father many years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago now. And he said, what if my kids he's a really good kid, but what if somebody sends him one of those? The phone is in my name. What should I do? So our advice to you is this, and please have this conversation proactively with your children. If they ever receive an image like that from anyone, especially if it's someone in their own school, they need to tell you about it. Okay. Again, the phone is in your name. If there's an investigation, who knows who really asked for it, right? The phone bill is in your name, not theirs. So make sure they tell you about it and then delete it. Okay. It's important they take action. And then your part of it is this: if you feel comfortable, if you knew the parents of the child who sent it, or who's in it, if you feel comfortable, let them know. If you don't feel comfortable, which many of you probably may not, you might want to report it. You can either report it to NCMEC, which is 1-800-THE-LOST. You can report it to, if you feel comfortable, to your school administration, because you have no idea if that's gone around the whole school. Or report it to law enforcement, your local law enforcement. Although I have had conversations with local law enforcement, and as much as they can help get involved, sometimes it doesn't necessarily rise to the top of their priority list. So those are your options. And the important message here is encourage your children to never feel pressured to take one or send one ever, because even the act of taking it already puts them at risk, especially if you're backing up files automatically to the cloud. It's already going somewhere else, right? And if they receive something like that, they have the doors open with no judgment on your part. Make sure they take action. Delete it. Do not distribute it. You don't want to be part of distributing that kind of imagery, okay? It's unfortunate, but this is one of the things I wanted to make sure you were aware of that's happened over the last 18 months. Finally, anybody have kids who struggle with just, when they're playing games and you say, hey, 10 more minutes, and then the 10 minutes is up and they just have a meltdown? Does that happen to anyone? Anybody have kids who have trouble breaking away from the games, right? Okay, yeah, this happens to lots and lots of us. So, again, the tools that we talked about, which is the timers, I would also tell your children in advance, this is going to cut you off. If I have this setting in Xbox family settings or iOS screen time, it's going to cut you off at this time. So just know it's going to happen, right? Now, they might be playing the kind of game where they work so hard to get to a certain level and then they get cut off. So it's understandable that they would have a meltdown. But here's what I recommend. If they're really struggling with that, consider games that are timed. Has anyone ever heard of Rocket League? Rocket League is just cars You just drive these cars and they just hit a soccer ball, big soccer ball into a net, right? The nice thing about Rocket League, and it's super fun. I'm not very good at it. I've tried, but is it's timed. At some point, the time ticks out and it's over. Whoever has the highest score wins. Same with Madden football and FIFA and the soccer games, or NBA 2K22, I guess, is coming out. Games that have times are probably a better option if you're thinking about gifts also for the holiday. That might be a better idea, especially for kids who really struggle to break away from the games. I'm not suggesting that they couldn't play other games, because you can use some of these tools that we talked about before, but think about that. And finally, so many games, there's almost no game that isn't social. So please use the settings so they're not necessarily playing Rocket League with a complete stranger. The thing I like about Rocket League, by the way, if you're not aware, it's not like Roblox. Roblox, free chat. Rocket League, when you chat, you have to pick from preset phrases. Phrases like, hey, great shot, or nice save, or whatever. And I think that's safer, to be honest, especially for younger kids. Now I'm going to go these last few parts pretty quickly. And I just, I'm conscious of time, but I want to make sure that we do address these, because some of you did raise concerns about bullying and kindness and things like that. And, I think it's just, first of all, children are taught at a very young age, even in the schools, right? Here's what it means to be a good classmate. We tell them, say please, say thank you, be polite. And just reminding children that on the internet, for all the reasons we talked about before, there's so much being collected about us. Every time we click, everything we post, every time we download, search, watch, shop, browse, it doesn't matter. Every single thing we're doing on the internet is being collected and tracked. So it adds up to a picture of who we are. And we have to remind our kids that that's what's happening. So who are you? Who are the kind of person that someone might figure out you are online? It has a lot to do with how we behave. So even if somebody posted something that they didn't post it, it's kind of mean, kind of rude, maybe it's even over the top bad, don't like it, don't comment on it, don't do any of those things, because it will reflect on you. There have been plenty of stories in the news of even the older kids who, I remember this story of a Penn State high school kid who was recruited to play for Penn State football scholarship, and he didn't post anything, but he liked something that was really, really inappropriate, and they took away the scholarship. And we've heard worse stories. So at a young age, make sure they're very aware of that. And kindness is not just about, saying nice things. It's also about respecting other people's privacy, family rules. So maybe your child is allowed to have a phone now, but their friend is not. So find other ways to communicate, and don't make fun of them. If that kid's not allowed to play a violent video game and your child is, make sure you tell your children, respect other people's rules. And if we all did that for each other, I think we'd have a lot less drama and issues with kids online. I want to mention one thing. In the news, you've probably heard about the TikTok challenges. Has anyone heard about those? You can put it in the chat, okay? Really horrible. And it's not very different from the challenges that you've seen happen on YouTube in the past. You remember planking? I can't remember all the other challenges, right? But on TikTok, there was sort of a schedule, a calendar that some regular basis, a new challenge would go out there. These were challenges like slap a teacher, go to school and slap the teacher, or destroy something in the school bathroom. These are not the kinds of, first of all, these are not online behaviors, but they are behaviors that start being encouraged online and then taken offline. So I think it's important for you as parents to remember, and sometimes those are being filmed by others and then posted online, right? All of these things are reasons that we need to be very involved in our children's lives and what they're doing with these apps. And we'll show you some resources later on of how you can stay up to date on issues, sort of trends and things that are going on, to be mindful of. But the more you're aware of those, and you can sit down at the dinner table and say to your kids, let's just, what do you think about this? And what would you do if one of your friends was doing this, or you found out about it in your school? You being aware of it and then having open conversations with your kids about it is one of the best ways to A, stay involved in what's going on, and B, making sure your children are consciously thinking about their choices and their behaviors. Earlier, I talked about kindness being directed not just towards others, but to oneself too. How many of you use Facebook or any social network? And how does it feel when you post something and people like it or comment? How does that feel? People like your pictures or your whatever you post up there, right? Feels really good. It's very affirming, right? And when children are new to social media, oh boy, do they just go crazy, like in a candy store. But, as is appropriate for their age, when they feel bad, they feel really bad. When they feel good, they feel really good. And they want to search the behaviors that make them feel good. So we need to remind our children that whether or not they get as many likes on their picture as someone else, that their value is not equal to the number of likes, followers, comments, friend requests that they're getting online. It can be very distressing to watch a child's whole demeanor change just because of the way they're tying up their personal value to their online presence. Remind them that, what? People make choices about what they're posting there. Not their whole entire life and whole entire day isn't perfect the way that you might think it is, because they only choose to put the stuff up there that makes them feel good. It doesn't mean their whole life is always like that. So we have to have very explicit conversations with our children about that and remind them that their value is much greater than the sum of their likes and their followers and their friend requests. We may have to remind ourselves of that too sometimes. So be there. The research shows that children are not as likely to get bullied or bully. Doesn't mean it wouldn't happen, okay? But the majority of our children are more likely to witness it happening to someone else. A greater majority are more likely to witness this. So what we can do to support our children is to talk to them about, what would you do if you saw that happening to one of your friends? What does it mean to be a good friend to someone online? Well, you'd be surprised if you ask. I've been in classrooms of kids to say, if you see someone bullying online or being unkind, what do you do? They tell you right away. I report them. I tell a grown-up. I block them. I mute them, right? I tell them to stop. Or I tell the person who's being targeted, don't listen to them. Okay? Don't listen to them. You're a good person. And there are so many ways that we can help our children be great upstanders for others online. So it may never happen. I encourage you to have those conversations, and hopefully they'll never have to use any of it. Okay? If it happens to your child, okay, we do know from the research that children who experience anything negative, both online and off, but definitely online, the children who have a support system around them, a grown-up they can go to, a teacher that they trust, a group of good friends or family members, children who are supported, who experience adversity online, are the ones who can bounce back the best. So we need to make sure we're always there for them. They know that they can come to us without judgment if something happens online, okay? What you don't want to happen is all of a sudden one day they stop talking, they stop eating, they just go to their room and they never want to, they feel sick, they don't want to go to school. You don't want that to happen. Keep the lines of communication open. And when you see good things happening online, please show them. Show them. You know those moments where you see those posts, you're like, oh my gosh, I've restored my faith in humanity. Share those stories with them so they know that not everything online is hate and anger. We're going to bring it around the bend here in the end and just close with being savvy. And I appreciate for those of you who still stayed on, because I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. And please keep the questions and comments coming. I appreciate it. So, it's really hard to tell on the internet what to trust anymore. Too easy for someone to create a fake profile or post anything and make everybody believe it. So we're big fans of a couple of things. If a child ever gets a friend request or they're wondering if it's a real person that's following them, just take the image of that person in the account and do a reverse image search. If you do a reverse image search on Google, just look it up, plop the photo in, and you can tell if the photo's been used anywhere else. Helps you figure out, hey, wait a minute, that's not a real person. That picture was used in another place for another reason by another person. But also with regard to things like news or hoaxes, or is it believable or not? Is it real or not? We're big fans of, this is something that the librarians in your children's schools are teaching. It's called media literacy skills. Okay. How do I think critically about the stuff I am seeing online? And you as parents can support this by simply saying, look, if the headline or the post seems so outrageous, if you feel a strong emotion from it, it's probably a good sign that you should pause and say, wait a minute, before I comment, before I share it, before I like it. Even we as adults should do this. Okay, all of us should do this to stop the spread of stuff that shouldn't be spread around. Ask questions. And I won't go through all these questions here, but we created a guide together with the National Association for Media Literacy Education, which you can find on our website. I'll show you where that is later, of how you can go through certain scenarios with your kids. Any librarians out there, you're heroes. You're heroes. I don't think you hear enough, but you are. Thank you for all you do for our kids, because it's getting harder to know what we can trust and not online. Okay, have any of you, got two more to go. Have any of you looked yourself up on Google? And what did you find? Have you ever looked yourself up on Google and what did you find? So I did, and I found that I was in jail. You can write to Lynette Owens in jail. That's not me. I own a big business, like a hotel, resort, or meeting conference business in San Diego. It looks real fun. Those are all my cyber twins. Yeah, I had a parent just last week tell me that her husband's cyber twin is like a serial killer or something. I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. So this is a good habit, actually, to look yourself up. And actually, when I've asked students this, a lot of them have looked themselves up. Sometimes they actually find not their cyber twin, but they actually find stuff about themselves. Good to know if there's something out there about you or your child, right? And many times it's fine. They did something good for the school. I did have a senior in high school tell me once that right before the college application season, she found herself it was something she didn't want public. It was a classmate who edited a video, created an image, and put it out there publicly. So she addressed that boy, said, take it down. She reported it to the site on which he posted it to make sure it was all gone. But that's why it's important that we check online regularly, and you don't actually have to go searching every time. You can actually just set up a Google alert, and you just go to google.com/alerts, and you can type in any name, word, or phrase that you want, Google to alert you on that something public has been posted with this word, name, or phrase. And then you can decide how frequently you want them to alert you. It sends you an email once a day or once a week, and you can decide, do I want it to be just from everything or just news or whatever, right? And it's a good idea. I use this for work actually, because I keep up on stuff that's going on with a lot of the apps that we talked about. So think about setting up a Google alert for yourself, one day. I love it. A lady with my name calls herself the Dragon Lady. Depending on who you are, maybe you feel good about that, maybe you don't, but good to know who your cyber twin is. But here is the reason why. Okay, here's another reason why this is important. We've been watching research from the Kaplan Institute. The Kaplan Institute is the organization that creates a lot of the PSAT preparatory materials. They're basically connected to the whole, if you have kids who are interested in going to college one day, right? And they started asking college admissions officers around the country. In 2014 was the first year, I think. And they said, beyond the application, would you ever look up a student online on social media? Would you ever look them up? And in 2014, that answer was 25%. Then the next year it went up, next year it went up, and it kept on going up until this year. 65% of those polled said, I would do it if I needed to. If I really wasn't sure whether or not this applicant was a good fit for us or not, 65% said they would. And for those who looked, 58% of them found something that they didn't like, that kind of told them, you know what, this isn't the kind of person we want at our school. And yes, I will repeat how you do. You basically go to google.com/alert, google.com/alerts, and you will see the page and you can just go through the process of setting up the alert. Okay. So 58% said they found something they didn't like, but 42%, which is very high to me, found something that convinced them, yes, this is the person we want. Why do I bring that up? Well, I go back to something I said at the very beginning. When we talk to children about using technology as good digital citizens, we cannot just say, hide everything, okay? We can, and it's good that they're using privacy settings. And by the way, when you use a google.com alert, only publicly indexable information is found, meaning anything behind a privacy setting you will not find. You will never get a Google alert because that'll never be public, right? But if it's not behind a privacy setting, then you will get an alert. And the 42% is, to me, a very high number. I'm interested to see what happens in 2022 when they do their next survey. Because we need to also talk to kids about ways to use the internet that will be positive for them, that is productive for them and for others. So what are ways, even if your child is still young now, think about the positive ways that they could use the internet. Yes, watch kittens falling asleep and play Minecraft. Use the internet for fun stuff, sure. Do your homework, that's great too. But there are other ways that we can encourage good uses. Things like learning a new skill. Maybe some of you baked bread over the pandemic. I guess that was a thing. I wasn't one of those people, but I definitely learned to cook a lot more stuff than I did prior to that. Promoting a cause or raising funds for a nonprofit or worthy organization in your town. These are great uses of the internet, stuff that they can talk about later on when they're applying for a job or even applying for college. If they like to write, they like to draw, they're a performer, they're an athlete, there are more sites and apps out there where they can showcase that kind of stuff. And, I'm a big fan if your kids are great at art or something like writing, poetry, whatever, you can set up a blog for them on WordPress, or there's many other free sites you could do it on, and just keep it behind a password so that it's not necessarily public while they're still young, until they're ready, until they feel ready that they would want the public to see those things. But here's a better one. If they like to do a lot of those things, enter contests. Wonderful, wonderful contests for kids who like to make videos. Again, perform, write, there's spoken word stuff. We've seen many things like this. And what I like about contests is it teaches them to work towards a deadline, to work within rules, maybe even to have to collaborate with other people. And they might not win, but they can start to accumulate a portfolio of all the things they've entered. What a great way to use the internet. And these are just a few examples. So we talked about a lot of stuff tonight. And what we did is in October of this year, we launched our Cyber Academy for Kids. This is pretty ideal for the 7 to 10-year-olds. What it is, it's on our site, which I'll be showing you in a second, is short little animated videos followed by a Kahoot quiz, just to make sure they learned what they were supposed to learn. There's an activity sheet, like a coloring sheet, WordFind, whatever, and a conversation guide you can use with your children. Each one of these videos is about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes long only. So I encourage you, for some of the things we talked about tonight, to actually have your kids try out our Cyber Academy modules. We have many more topics coming down the road next year, but I encourage you to do it with them. Do it with them. So stay active, stay up to date on everything that we talked about tonight. There's always something new. In our talks, they change constantly. So if you came tonight, maybe a year from now, you might want to come again, because I'm sure there'll be lots of new stuff. Communicate with your kids, with other parents in your community. Talk to your schools about the ways they're using, Google Docs or Moodle or whatever other technology they're using in the classroom, and stay up to date, as I said. So I challenge you, after you leave tonight, do one new thing you had not done before. Maybe you turn on two-step verification in your kids' Roblox account. Maybe you set up a google.com alert for yourself or your kids. Whatever it is, do one new thing, please. I encourage you to put questions in the Q&A if you have any. And again, I thank you all for joining us tonight. It was super fun. This is our website, trendmicro.com/internet-safety, which has the Cyber Academy, blogs, past topical webinars. We've had great guests on those webinars in the past, tip sheets and so on. We try to keep you up to date as much as we can. And Family Tech Talk Night from PTO Today also has lots of great tip sheets as well. This is their site. But if you go to if you search Family Tech Talk, you'll find this. Once you close out, you'll see a web page asking you for feedback, really short. And if you include your email address in your feedback, you'll automatically be entered to win a copy, potentially, of our security product for free, covering up to 5 devices in your house for a year. No obligation, though. If you don't want to give your email, that's fine. No problem at all. Thank you so much for spending, and I'm sorry I went a little bit over tonight. Thank you, Gigi, for being our interpreter. If you have questions and are speaking Spanish, please go ahead and put your question in the Q&A in Spanish, and Gigi will translate that for me. Follow me on Twitter. I have been a little bit quiet of late, but I'm pretty chatty there most of the time. And any questions, feel free to reach out. Again, the organizer at your school is going to get a copy of tonight's recording, so you will have access to that later on. I'm going to take this one question. I have a question about iOS screen time. Do you know how to get around when you use the family share plan? I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you know how to get around that when you use the family sharing plan? Oh, can the children get around the screen time settings? I'm not aware of that. I have heard parents ask about the fact that their kids can get away with like, basically a loophole around screen time. What I'll do, Michelle, is I'd like to make sure you put your address in the sign up sheet so we can get an answer for you about that. Yeah. Oh, they share iCloud storage. Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you still should be able to use iOS screen time because you're setting up a child's account under your own. Okay. So wherever your child is connecting, you're kind of like the Uber account over theirs. So no matter what they're doing, as long as they're doing it on that device, you should be able to have the ability to manage that. Okay, so you're saying they can override the screen time limits. Okay, thank you, Michelle. What I'd like to do is get an answer for you. So I don't have the answer for you right now, but we will get you an answer. So please make sure that you use the sign up sheet and put your address in there so we can get you an answer. Great question, though. Not all these tools are perfect. Not all these tools are perfect. They don't take the place of parenting at all. Awesome. Okay, glad you did. Okay, great. All right. Well, again, thanks for joining us tonight. And again, if you know any people who have not attended one of these, we have several more dates going out till next May. We host about 2 to 3 every month. So we'd love to see people that haven't had a chance to be here. Please encourage them. Just go to internet safety, trendmicro.com/internet-safety, and you can see all of the dates that we'll be doing this in the future. I wish you all a fantastic Thanksgiving. Be safe. Be safe out there and be safe online as well. Oh, I see. We have a question. Does Trend Micro have any idea when they can visit schools again? This is really something that we are weighing very carefully. We've noticed that state by state, it's very different as well, and whether or not schools will allow us in. And so what we'd like to do is, if some of the classrooms are willing to have us come virtually, we can do that too, where we could go through some of the those modules in the Cyber Academy. We have lots of content for kids of all ages, but please reach out to us and let us know if that's something your school would be interested in having us do. We'd love to be there. We miss the kids. My last school I visited was February 2020. February 2020. So fantastic. Okay, fantastic. Gigi, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you everybody for being here. I have 2 colleagues, Michael and Tim, who are also behind the scenes. Thanks for being here. Good night.